I always believed absurdity had limits. That is, until the day a woman I barely knew sued me over a pet I never owned. It started with a bark. Or, more accurately, the rumor of a bark. My name's Taylor Monroe, and I moved into Blue Meadow Springs last spring, an HOA community with perfectly trimmed hedges, mailbox uniformity, and a resident population of people who cared way too much about lawn height. I was 32, fresh off a job promotion, and proud owner of exactly 0 pets. My condo was quiet, minimal, and completely compliant with every line in the HOA handbook. Which is why the violation notice confused me. It was taped to my front door on a Tuesday morning like an eviction threat, bright orange, scotch-taped aggressively, and stamped with an overly bold notice of noncompliance. The accusation? Unauthorized canine on property. I stared at the wording, then looked around. No dog. No leash. No food bowls or barking. Just me, my silent little porch, and a wind chime that barely moved. I crumpled the notice and walked it to the trash. That was my first mistake. 2 days later came the second notice, this one thicker, stapled, and smelling faintly of lavender, which should have been my first clue. At the bottom, in bold print, it read, signed by HOA President Karen Delaney. Karen Delaney. The name carried weight around Blue Meadow like thunder on a humid day. I'd only seen her once before, during my first week, pacing up and down our sidewalk like a monarch inspecting her kingdom. Late 50s, platinum bob, visor always tilted precisely 12 degrees. She never smiled, just nodded like someone who constantly tasted lemon and didn't trust happiness. Now she was accusing me of harboring an unregistered dog. Still confused, I called the HOA office. The receptionist sounded nervous. She says she saw it, the girl on the phone mumbled. Late at night. In your backyard. I live in a condo, I said. I don't have a backyard. There was a pause. I'm just relaying the complaint. I should have stopped there. But curiosity, and irritation, got the better of me. That weekend, I went around asking neighbors if they'd heard barking. Most looked confused. A few said no. One, Mr. Ahms, who lived directly below me, scratched his head and said, honestly, it's the quietest unit in the building. You should hear what happens 2 doors down, real circus act over there. Still no evidence. No noise complaints. Nothing. So I laughed. And then I made the second mistake. I wrote a letter. A cheeky, polite, overly formal response to Karen's violation, complete with a humorous sketch of an invisible dog named Harold wearing sunglasses and sipping a martini. I even included a line at the end. If Harold continues to cause a ruckus, I'll consider obedience school, assuming you can catch him. I dropped it off at the HOA drop box. Thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. 3 days later, I got served. A real, certified letter. From an actual lawyer. Karen Delaney was suing me for violating HOA bylaws regarding unauthorized pets, habitual nuisance barking, and, most baffling of all, emotional damage caused by repeated nighttime disturbances from a domestic animal. She claimed to have video evidence. My jaw hit the floor. That evening, I did what any sane person would do, I laughed. I laughed so hard I cried. And then came the flashing lights. It was 10:16 p.m. when 2 police cruisers rolled up outside my condo, red and blue bouncing off the windows. I opened the door mid-laugh, still in sweatpants, holding a half-empty wine glass. The officer on the left looked serious. Sir, we received a report of aggressive behavior linked to a possible animal disturbance. I blinked. Aggressive behavior? Ma'am, Karen Delaney claims you verbally threatened her and released your unlicensed dog in an attempt to intimidate her. I blinked again. I don't have a dog, I said. The officer nodded slowly, like he'd heard that before. May we come in? I stepped aside, gesturing to the empty hallway. They looked. They found nothing. One of them even chuckled. Unless it's invisible, I think we're clear. But Karen wasn't done. And this was only the beginning. The day after the police visit, I found a bag of dog biscuits on my porch. No note. No branding. Just a brown paper bag filled with milk bone-style treats and a ribbon tied in the most passive-aggressive bow I'd ever seen. I looked around. No cars. No footsteps on the sidewalk. Just birds chirping and one tabby cat watching me like I'd wandered into the wrong movie. I held the bag like it was radioactive. That's when I realized this was deeper than I thought. Karen wasn't just accusing me, she was trying to provoke me. Build a story. Create a paper trail for a narrative only she could see. And I was walking right into it. I should have thrown the treats away and called it a day. But I didn't. I took a picture of the bag and posted it to the community forum, with the caption, "Harold strikes again. Appreciate the snacks, but he's gluten-free." It exploded. Comments flooded in. Dozens of neighbors chimed in, some laughing, some asking if I really had a dog, a few even pretending they'd seen Harold too. It became a joke. One woman, Linda from Unit 204, said she saw Harold driving a golf cart. Someone else posted a photoshopped image of a German shepherd wearing night vision goggles. The meme cycle had begun. And Karen? She hated it. 2 days later, she updated the community notice board with a typed letter titled, "The Dangers of Glorifying Rule Breakers." In it, she called Harold a clear violation of community safety standards, accused residents of abetting falsehoods, and warned of pending legal consequences for those spreading disinformation. It was the single most humorless document I had ever read. I framed it and hung it in my kitchen. But things took a darker turn. That Friday evening, I noticed a small black camera mounted to the light pole across from my building. It hadn't been there before. And the angle? Directly aimed at my unit. The following morning, I stepped outside and found another violation notice on my door. Excessive nocturnal noise attributed to animal activity between 11:52 p.m. and 12:17 a.m. Karen had timestamps now. She was logging imaginary barking. My condo, which hadn't even hosted a goldfish in over a year, was apparently the epicenter of a canine revolution. I tried contacting the HOA board. I left voicemails. I wrote emails. But everything looped back to Karen, and Karen wasn't responding. So I went low-tech. I printed out a series of flyers, each featuring a different Harold variation. Harold the Pomeranian astronaut. Harold the Shih Tzu detective. Harold the French bulldog lawyer. I taped them all over the neighborhood notice board with a simple line at the bottom. Reward offered for the capture of this elusive beast. Approach with treats. Avoid eye contact. May bark in Morse code. The neighborhood was howling with laughter. Kids started asking their parents where Harold lived. Someone left a plush stuffed dog on my porch wearing sunglasses and a Hawaiian shirt. It was glorious. Until Karen cracked. That Sunday, while I was taking out the trash, she ambushed me. She stormed down the sidewalk like a thundercloud in orthopedic shoes, flanked by 2 clipboard-wielding board members who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. She pointed her phone at me, recording. "You are in violation of multiple HOA codes," she snapped. "Still waiting to meet this dog," I said cheerfully. "I've seen it with my own eyes," she barked. Medium-sized, dark fur, ran across the lawn at 11:53 p.m. I logged it myself. I spread my arms. "Search the place. Go ahead. Bring the sniffing dogs for Harold if you like." One of the board members coughed. The other pretended to find his shoelace fascinating. Karen's nostrils flared. "You think this is funny? You think mocking the rules makes you some kind of hero?" I smiled. "No. But it makes me the only guy in the HOA being sued over an imaginary dog, and I think that earns me at least a merit badge." And that's when she lost it. Karen shrieked, "This is harassment. I'm calling the cops." I blinked. "Over a conversation? You're threatening me. You're inciting the neighborhood. You're slandering the HOA with this nonsense. I looked at the two board members. Gentlemen, am I threatening anyone? They both shook their heads immediately. One muttered, we really need to revise our process. Karen stomped away, phone still recording, screaming into it like she was delivering a monologue to a very confused jury. I went back inside, made popcorn, and turned on my security camera feed. 10 minutes later, the police returned. Same two officers from the first visit. They looked even more exhausted than last time. The taller one knocked, sighed, and said, we've received another call. Let me guess, I said. Harold's back. Apparently, now he's armed and responding to threats. I laughed again. I swear I don't even own a leash. This time, the officers didn't search the place. They sat down at my kitchen table, accepted coffee, and one of them actually asked, so, is Harold, like, a metaphor? I was too busy laughing to answer. But Karen wasn't done. And she was about to make her most outrageous move yet. The envelope arrived on a Wednesday. Thick. Cream-colored. Embossed with a gold seal so dramatic it looked like it belonged to a royal decree, not a neighborhood dispute. The return address? Delaney and Parks, attorneys at law. Karen had hired a law firm. I opened it slowly, half expecting glitter or anthrax. Instead, I found a 12-page letter that might as well have been written in Comic Sans for how serious it made me feel. The core accusation. Mr. Monroe has maintained an unregistered canine on HOA property in direct violation of Section 14 Sub-Article B of the Blue Meadow Springs Community Code. Also, repeated willful obstruction of HOA efforts to document said animal. Community destabilization via public mockery. And my personal favorite. Creation of a fictional entity, Harold, for the purposes of ridicule, obstruction, and emotional manipulation. I read that line 3 times. Karen was suing me not just for having a dog, but for inventing a dog and emotionally manipulating the HOA with him. Somewhere in the universe, Harold barked proudly. The letter concluded with a demand. Cease and desist all pet-related activity, pay restitution for emotional distress, $1,200, and publicly admit to the existence and removal of the animal. I laughed so hard I spilled coffee on the pages. This wasn't a lawsuit, it was a novel. A fantasy story starring a dog who didn't exist, and a woman who had clearly slipped off the ledge of reason and landed headfirst in bureaucracy. But Karen had crossed the line now. Hiring a lawyer meant she was serious. And I wasn't about to let Harold go down without a fight. So I responded in kind. I called my cousin Brianna, a real attorney with a real license and a wicked sense of humor. When I told her what was going on, she nearly choked on her green smoothie. Let me get this straight, she said. You're being sued for owning a fictional dog? Yes. And they're asking for money? Yes. And an admission that the fictional dog existed? Correct. She paused. This is art. We drafted a reply. A formal letter. Double-spaced. Notarized. Delivered by certified mail. It read, in part. My client, Mr. Monroe, denies all allegations, including, but not limited to, the existence of a canine, the existence of a canine named Harold, and the accusation that said canine has manipulated the emotional well-being of HOA members. And then. Furthermore, if the HOA insists on pursuing litigation against a theoretical pet, we request proof, physical, visual, or otherwise, of said pet's presence on the premises. The cherry on top? We included a photograph of Harold. An empty leash lying on a perfectly manicured lawn. Captioned. Exhibit A, Harold in his natural habitat. The internet exploded. I posted it anonymously to a local subreddit. It went viral. Within 48 hours, hashtag Justice for Harold was trending in our city. Someone made t-shirts. One local bar added a drink special, the Harold, whiskey, soda, and just a hint of imaginary lime. And Karen? Karen doubled down. She printed still images from grainy security footage showing blurry shadows crossing my patio at night. Claimed it was a medium-sized animal with the gait of a terrier. I zoomed in. It was a trash bag caught in the wind. Then came the door-to-door campaign. Karen and her clipboard army began canvassing the neighborhood, asking if anyone had heard Harold. If anyone had seen a leash. If anyone had noticed behavioral changes in their pets that could be attributed to a dominant dog in the area. A neighbor down the block texted me a photo of Karen crouched behind a bush with binoculars. Another caught her crawling under their deck looking for fur samples. It was becoming a sitcom. But the lawsuit didn't go away. The HOA board, reluctant but under Karen's thumb, sent out a community vote. Should we pursue legal action against a resident for non-compliant pet ownership? And here's where the twist came. I spoke at the board meeting. Standing in a room of about 20 neighbors, I brought a leash. Just a leash. No dog. I set it on the table and said, "This is Harold. He's been nothing but respectful. Quiet. Doesn't bark. Doesn't poop on lawns. Doesn't bite." The room chuckled. "I ask only one thing," I continued. "If someone is going to accuse me of violating the rules, they need to show proof. Real proof. Not rumors. Not shadows. Not hurt feelings. Actual evidence." Karen stood up, shaking. "I know what I saw. I have ears. This man is mocking the entire system." Someone from the back shouted, "I voted for Harold in the last HOA election." The room erupted in laughter. And that's when Karen did something I'll never forget. She screamed, full volume, "You people are all complicit." She pointed at the board, the neighbors, even the guy filming with his phone. "I will not let this community fall into anarchy because of a ghost dog." The room fell silent. She looked around, suddenly aware of how unhinged she sounded. Then she stormed out, slamming the door so hard a decorative vase fell off the wall. The next morning, the lawsuit was dropped. But Karen wasn't finished. No. Karen was about to make one last desperate move. A stunt so ridiculous, so jaw-droppingly extra, it would go down as legend in the annals of HOA madness. 3 peaceful days passed after the lawsuit was dropped. The HOA board sent a quiet email apologizing for any confusion. Harold memes continued to spread like wildfire. One neighbor crocheted a little invisible dog leash and gave it to me in a gift bag labeled "for emotional support." Life, it seemed, was returning to normal. Then, on a bright Saturday morning, it happened. The incident. It started with a bark. A single, distant, muffled woof from somewhere down the block. Not from my condo. Not even from the same building. But that didn't matter. Because Karen heard it. And she ran. Like a greyhound in pastel linen, she sprinted down the sidewalk, notepad flapping, phone camera aimed, shouting, "I knew it. I knew he was hiding that mutt." She stormed up my driveway before I even had a chance to sip my coffee. "I heard him," she declared, panting slightly. "This time, I have auditory proof. The canine has returned." I blinked. "Karen, that wasn't me. It came from 2 blocks down. Probably the Bernardo's new puppy." "Lies," she snapped, spinning to aim her phone at my porch. "This entire residence is a kennel of chaos." "Karen," I said calmly, "Harold isn't real." And that's when she did it. She pulled out a small black device and pressed a button. From her phone came the playback of a faint bark. Grainy. Distant. Followed by a pause. Then, there. "That's the sound. That's the beast." She looked triumphant. "I have recorded Harold," she said. "And this is the final nail in your fabricated coffin of deceit." It was so dramatically absurd that I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Then she stepped off the sidewalk and onto my property. And I had to shut it down. "Karen, you're trespassing." I'm executing a citizen inspection, she said, adjusting her visor like a sheriff preparing for a standoff. You're not a law enforcement officer. You're a woman with a Bluetooth speaker and a bark clip. And I'm prepared to call the police again, she announced. Great, I said. Let's all call them together. Maybe we can play bingo while we wait. And so, for the third time in 2 weeks, the police arrived. Officer Bennett was the first to step out, followed by his new partner, a woman with the expression of someone one coffee short of tolerance. Afternoon, he said, with a tired smile. Karen again? Karen waved her phone like a badge. This time, I have evidence. Play the tape. Officer Bennett listened to the clip. Then he turned to me. Sir, do you own a dog? Nope. Have you ever owned a dog? Not since I was 12. He was a plush husky named Bark Twain. The new officer snorted. Karen glared. I demand that you search the premises, she barked. You'd need a warrant, Officer Bennett replied. Then detain him. Karen shrieked. For not having a dog? For lying. For obstruction. For community terrorism. That last part made everyone pause. Ma'am, said the new officer carefully, you're escalating a personal dispute into something it's not. We're not detaining anyone today. Karen gasped like someone had just canceled her country club brunch. Then I'll take matters into my own hands, she muttered. This community will not fall into tail-wagging anarchy. She turned, stomped away, and muttered something about Operation Whistle Watch. By Monday morning, she'd launched it. I came out to find laminated flyers on every mailbox. K9 surveillance alert, be vigilant, be vocal, be victorious. Each one included a grainy stock photo of a snarling dog and tips on spotting signs of secret pet harboring. She also began carrying a dog whistle around her neck and blowing it whenever she passed my unit, presumably trying to flush Harold out like some cartoon villain hunting Bugs Bunny. My neighbors started taking turns filming her antics. One caught her circling my building in a slow crouch like a mall cop in stealth mode. Another recorded her staring at my windows for 17 straight minutes, whispering, I know you're in there. The videos went viral. People from outside our neighborhood started visiting just to walk past my unit and look for Harold. Local news caught wind. A segment aired titled, The Dog That Wasn't There, How One HOA Went Too Far. Karen tried to sue the station. It failed. And then, the ultimate twist. 2 weeks after the HOA dropped their suit, I received a handwritten letter. It came from a young man named Toby who lived several blocks down. He apologized, profusely. Turns out, Toby's dog Max had escaped his yard weeks ago. He wandered through several lawns, including mine, at night, before returning home the next morning. The bark Karen had recorded? Toby had reviewed his own security footage. Max was the one barking on the night of Karen's so-called breakthrough evidence. He even included a screenshot, Max, a chocolate lab, standing proudly near my mailbox at exactly 11:52 p.m. Case closed. But I wasn't about revenge. I was about closure. So I printed a final flyer. One that said, Harold has left for college. He thanks you for your support. Please forward Bones to his dorm. Karen, naturally, tore it down within the hour. But the community? They cheered. Because in the end, we weren't just defending me. We were defending our right to live without being hounded, pun fully intended, by the paranoia of someone who mistook her position for power. It would have been poetic to say Karen faded quietly. That after her canine crusade collapsed, she retreated with grace into her flower beds, never to bother anyone again. But Karen was Karen. And she went out swinging. The last straw came one rainy Thursday afternoon. I was inside reading when I heard the unmistakable screech of metal scraping concrete. I looked out my window and saw it, Karen, dragging a full-sized No Unauthorized Pets sign across my driveway and pounding it into the community grass with what looked like a croquet mallet. She stood back, hands on hips, rain matting her visor, staring at her work like she'd just finished building the Hoover Dam. I stepped outside. She didn't even look at me. "You brought this on yourself," she said, still out of breath from her assault on the turf. "Now everyone will know what you've done." "What I've done," I echoed. She pointed a wet finger at me. "You and your imaginary dog. Your jokes. Your mockery. You've turned this neighborhood into a circus." I tilted my head. "Karen, it was a circus. I just brought the popcorn." She threw her hands up. "I will not let Harold win." And in that exact moment, hand to heart, a real dog barked in the distance. One single bark. Karen's eyes went wild. "There he is. You heard it. It came from the park, Karen. It was him. He's in college, remember? Pre-med." Karen charged back to her car without another word. Tires squealed. Sign tipped over in the mud. But the story didn't end with her tantrum. It ended, unexpectedly, with a vote. See, after all the drama, the board had had enough. Neighbors were fed up. The memes were fun, sure. But the police visits, the flyers, the public freakouts? Not so much. So at the next quarterly meeting, which was standing room only, a motion was introduced. To remove Karen Delaney from her position as HOA president, effective immediately, for abuse of authority, harassment, and bringing disrepute to the HOA. I didn't say a word. I sat in the back, sipping chamomile tea from a Harold-themed mug someone gave me as a joke gift. The motion passed. Unanimously. Karen's face froze in a mask of disbelief. She stood, mouth open, blinking like she'd just been evicted from her own empire. Someone clapped. Then someone else. And before long, the room was filled with polite, quiet applause. Not wild. Not angry. Just relieved. Karen didn't even stay for the closing announcements. She moved out 6 weeks later. Word was she found a better community in a place with a stricter HOA. A neighborhood where Harold would never survive. Or maybe, never need to. As for Blue Meadow Springs? Well, things calmed down. The notice board went back to babysitting ads and lawn service flyers. The jokes faded. People got back to their routines. But Harold? He lived on. Neighbors started using Harold as shorthand for any ridiculous accusation. Left your trash can out too long? Careful, Harold might report you. Grass 2 inches too high? Must be Harold's fault. One kid dressed as Harold for Halloween, just an empty leash and a name tag. The HOA board added a new clause to the community guidelines. No pet shall be deemed in violation unless physically confirmed by at least 2 non-related households. We called it the Harold Rule. And me? I still live in the same condo. Still no dog. But sometimes, just to keep the legend alive, I'll leave a bowl outside labeled Harold's Water. Or hang a leash by the mailbox. Not to antagonize. Just to remind people, sometimes the rules are worth questioning. And sometimes, the best defense against absurdity is laughter. Oh, and one last thing. About a month after Karen left, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just a simple, folded note. Inside, it read. Harold lives. He says thanks for the ride. K. Taped to the note? A dog biscuit. I laughed for a long, long time. And then I put it on my fridge, right next to Harold's invisible adoption certificate. Because sometimes, when the world goes barking mad, all you need is a leash with nothing on the end of it, and the courage to hold it high.